CEO hears janitor speak 9 languages. What he does next leaves everyone speechless. 9 languages, one mop. A woman with no diploma but an intellect that silences boardrooms. When the CEO of a global firm overhears his janitor casually switching between Mandarin and Spanish in the lobby, he makes a choice that will ignite admiration, resistance, and change. This is not just her story, it's the story of every hidden talent waiting to be seen. Before we start the story, write in the comments from which part of the world you're watching today. At precisely 7:45 in the morning, the elevators of Hallberg International opened their polished steel jaws and spat out their usual cargo: sharp suits, caffeine breath, and the clatter of urgent heels. It was a Tuesday, nothing special. No memo had warned that this day would make company history. The marble floors gleamed, not by magic, but because of a woman who'd already been working for 3 hours. Denise Etwater, burgundy uniform zipped up to her neck, moved in rhythms so practiced they no longer required thought. Her hands scrubbed, her eyes observed, her ears always listening. But today someone listened to her. Jonathan Kellerman, CEO of Hallberg International, rarely came through the lobby. He had his own elevator. But that morning, after a fire drill rerouted him from his usual path, he stepped into the ground floor with a phone pressed to his ear and 100 unread emails swirling in his head. And then he paused. Mid-sentence, mid-step. "No, tell Singapore we'll need an extra week," he was saying. But the words halted when his ears caught an unmistakable stream of Mandarin, fluid, confident, and, more importantly, unhesitant. It wasn't an office worker. It wasn't anyone from the incoming crowd. He turned. There she was, kneeling beside a mop bucket, speaking softly into what looked like a personal phone, offering what sounded like detailed directions. After a few moments, she switched to Spanish. Then, just minutes later, he heard French. Not one language, not two. 3, effortless. The next words out of his mouth weren't for his assistant. They were for her. "Excuse me." Denise blinked, surprised, wiping her hand on her sleeve as she stood. "Yes, sir?" "I couldn't help overhearing," he began, trying to sound casual and failing. "You were speaking Mandarin, Spanish, and then French?" She nodded slowly. "Yes." "Do you speak all 3? 9, she corrected softly. Mandarin, Spanish, French, German, Arabic, Swahili, Russian, Italian, and Korean. "I can read Latin too." Kellerman stared. The marble beneath him could have cracked, and he wouldn't have noticed. "Do you work here?" he asked, the words absurd as they left his mouth. Denise didn't flinch. "I clean here." He looked at her, really looked, worn hands, calm eyes, perfect posture. There was nothing ordinary in how she held herself. No shame, no arrogance, just presence. "Come with me," he said, already turning. She hesitated only a second before following. In the corner office, with a view that sliced through downtown like a painting, Kellerman poured 2 glasses of water, a habit left over from his days in consulting. She didn't touch hers. He asked her name again, asked how, why. And she told him her story wasn't tragic. It was raw, born in rural Ohio. Scholarship to study linguistics at a university that took her in for her mind. Dropped out her 2nd year, mother diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Father died 6 months later, only child, no help. So she worked. Waitressed, then cleaned. Always worked nights so her daughter could go to school days. "And the languages?" he asked. She gave a half shrug. "They kept me sharp. I borrowed textbooks from libraries, downloaded language apps, watched public lectures online. It was the one thing I didn't let life take." He didn't speak for a while, just looked at her. "Why here?" he finally asked. "It's steady work, quiet, and nobody bothers me." He leaned back, still stunned. "You have no diploma, no corporate background, no connections. But you speak 9 languages and can quote Virgil." "Yes." "Do you know how rare that is?" She didn't answer. "I'd like to ask you a favor," he said. "We're having a meeting with Brazilian partners tomorrow. Our translator backed out. Would you be willing to help?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." No performance, no negotiation, just calm readiness. He walked her back to the lobby. She picked up her mop without fanfare, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. In the elevator ride up, Kellerman didn't speak. His reflection stared back at him in the mirror-polished walls as one thought looped through his mind. How many people like her have I passed by and never seen? When Denise entered the 15th floor conference room the next morning, no one noticed. They were too busy arguing over seating arrangements, rearranging branded folders, and ensuring the translation headsets were functioning. She moved quietly, as she always had, but this time she wasn't carrying a mop. Just a small notebook and the kind of stillness that made people instinctively turn to her when the room grew too loud. Jonathan Kellerman was already there. He didn't introduce her immediately. He watched. It wasn't until the Brazilian delegation arrived, all tailored suits and charming Portuguese, that he motioned to her. "This is Denise Etwater," he said. "She'll be our linguistic and cultural liaison today." There was a pause. One of the senior VPs, Carmichael, blinked twice. Another one leaned in toward Kellerman and whispered something. He ignored them. Instead, he turned to Denise and said, "Would you mind starting us off?" She did. In fluent Portuguese, not just correct but warm. Local idioms, gentle humor. Within minutes, the entire mood shifted. Tension eased, jokes were shared. Even the skeptical legal advisor from São Paulo chuckled. And then the real conversation began. As she translated, sometimes switching mid-sentence between Portuguese and English and back again, her voice never wavered. She didn't just convert words, she read rooms, managed tempo, softened disagreements before they grew teeth. At one point, a Brazilian executive asked where she'd learned to speak like that. "My neighbor growing up was from Recife," she answered in Portuguese. "I started helping him fill out his immigration forms when I was 10. I learned fast because he cooked well." Laughter, more notes were taken, and when the meeting ended, one of the clients said, not joking, "Can we borrow her for our negotiations with Berlin next quarter?" Kellerman smiled. "She's staying right here." Back in his office, later that day, he asked her the question that had been burning at him since yesterday. "You could have done anything. Why not finish school?" Denise looked down at her hands. "I wanted to. I was going to. But when my mum got sick, everything stopped." She told him about the scholarship, a full ride, including housing, based on her aptitude in languages and mathematics. About how her professors would leave extra assignments just for her, because you eat knowledge like it's candy. About the summer she translated ancient Latin texts for a professor of classical literature, not for credit, just for the joy of it. Then the calls from home started, confused ones, the kind where her mother forgot what day it was, where she couldn't remember how to work the stove. Her father, a steel mill worker with hands like hammers, tried to manage. He collapsed from a stroke one afternoon while lifting her mother out of the bathtub. That was the day Denise left school and never returned. There was no resentment in her voice, no bitterness. She simply said, "Family comes first, always." So she moved back, took jobs that didn't require a resume, cleaned office buildings, stocked shelves, drove delivery vans at night. She brought her mother tea every morning and read to her from a book of poetry in Italian. Her mother never understood it, but it made her smile. "And your daughter?" Kellerman asked. "Jade. She's 16, smart as hell, loves biology. I used to bring her cleaning rags as toys when she was little. She'd pretend they were animals. Now she's applying to science academies." "And you?" he asked. "What keeps you going?" Denise looked at him, calm. "Learning. Even when life took everything else, it never took that. When I clean, I listen to lectures, watch documentaries on my lunch break. Languages are the one thing no one could evict from me." Kellerman leaned back. The city behind him buzzed with motion, but in the room there was silence, dense with truth. "You know," he said finally, "what you did today, that wasn't translation. That was diplomacy. Cultural management. Relationship architecture." "I cleaned the air before the words," she said simply. He smiled. "That's a better job title than anything I've come up with." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that doesn't seek approval. It just is. He leaned forward. "Would you consider joining our international team? As a coordinator, not as a favor, as recognition." Her smile faded, but not in fear, in caution. I don't have a degree, no formal training. The board will never go for it. They'll deal with it, Kellerman said. I'm done walking past brilliance and pretending it's invisible. Her fingers folded around her notebook, tightly. This isn't charity, Denise. This is alignment. You are what this place claims to value. And if they don't see that, they'll answer to me. She exhaled very slowly. Then yes, I'd like to try. As she left his office, he called after her. You were never invisible, he said. Just unheard. The day of the presentation began with silence, and then spread with whispers. Denise Etwater now had a badge, not a visitor's pass, not a janitorial tag, a proper Hallberg International Staff ID, clipped neatly to a blazer she'd borrowed from a friend. No uniform, no mop, just a calm presence and a manila folder in her hands. The whispers grew louder when she walked past the usual cleaning staff who froze mid-mop stroke, blinking as if she were an illusion. She offered a quiet smile, one of them nodded back, confused. Another lowered her eyes. At 9 sharp, Denise stepped into the executive boardroom where the monthly International Strategy Committee met. Most of them had never seen her before. Those who had barely remembered. She'd always been a background figure, like the furniture or the windows, there clean, unnoticed. Now she was seated. At the table. Across from her sat 2 Brazilian directors and a German logistics advisor. On her right, Kellerman. On her left, 3 regional VPs who had each exchanged skeptical glances when she entered. The meeting opened in English, but within minutes it veered into Portuguese as the Brazilian team grew more comfortable. Denise didn't flinch. She translated in real time, tone, context, humor, without once interrupting the flow. When the German advisor dropped into a thick, idiomatic dialect that had stumped Hallberg's previous translators, she didn't blink. She responded in perfect Hochdeutsch. The room froze. The advisor stared, then laughed. Impressive, he said, switching back to English. How long have you worked in languages? Denise didn't miss a beat. Longer than I've been allowed to call it a profession. Even Kellerman raised an eyebrow. Later, when a tense moment emerged over a missed customs deadline, it wasn't the managers who diffused it. It was Denise. She turned to the Brazilian director, said something in a low, empathetic voice in Portuguese, then added a personal anecdote involving a storm, a stuck shipment, and a local wedding in Bahia. They laughed, then nodded. The atmosphere lightened. One of the VPs, Carmichael, watched carefully. He wasn't laughing. He leaned toward Kellerman. She's good, he murmured, but she's not certified. Kellerman didn't respond. Another VP, Rosalind Cho, jotted notes, her eyes never leaving Denise. When the meeting adjourned, she stood and asked bluntly, "How many languages do you speak?" 9 fluently, Denise answered. "I read Latin." "And you learned how?" "Books, online archives, talking to people, no formal training." There was a pause. "Then how do you handle technical vocabulary?" "I learn faster than most, and I never assume I know enough." Cho nodded slowly. "That's the right answer." After the meeting, one of the Brazilian directors stopped at the door. He turned to Kellerman. "Where did you find her?" Kellerman didn't hesitate. "Here, in our basement." The man smiled, clearly amused. "Hire more people from your basement, then." The next day, Denise found her inbox flooded. Not congratulations, questions. From HR, please confirm your employment history and qualifications. From corporate communications, we'd like to include you in the next staff spotlight. From an anonymous address, so what did you do? Save his life or something? But the one that stayed with her came from a young woman in marketing. My mother cleans buildings, speaks 4 languages. I've never told anyone. You've given me permission to be proud. Denise didn't reply to most. She kept her head down and did the work. Her job title now read Cultural and Linguistic Strategy Coordinator. The paycheck was better. The office had a window, but the real difference was in how people looked at her. Some avoided her altogether. Others stared like she'd grown a second head. And a few, very few, began to listen. At lunch in the company cafe, 2 junior analysts sat nearby, whispering too loudly. "Wait, she used to clean. That Denise?" "Yeah, I heard Kellerman's trying to make a statement or something. She must have had a hookup. She's a genius. You heard her in Portuguese? Still, no degree. That's gonna bite someone. She stood. They froze. Walking past them, she leaned slightly and said, without malice, "The problem isn't the floor I started on. It's the ceiling you think I don't deserve to reach." Neither responded. She didn't wait for them to. That evening, Kellerman called her into his office. "Good job today," he said. "You're getting noticed." She gave a small nod. Noticed is not the same as respected. That will come. Not by default. Respect has to be insisted on. He smiled faintly. "You're right. You know they're going to push back harder soon." "I know," she said. "Let them." He studied her. "You're not afraid." She met his gaze evenly. "I was afraid for 20 years. I worked through it." And then, before she left, she said something that stayed with him long after she closed the door. "I didn't clean to survive. I cleaned because I refused to vanish." That's not the same thing. 3 weeks into her new position, Denise received a calendar invite from Eleanor Craig. No explanation, just a location. Top floor, executive wing. A place Denise had never entered, even with a mop in hand. The invite came from Eleanor's assistant, and the title was sterile, check-in. But Denise knew exactly what it was. She arrived on time, not a minute early. Dressed in the same blazer, same clean shoes, same quiet confidence. No makeup, no pretense. The receptionist raised an eyebrow as she passed. When she entered, Eleanor Craig, vice chair of the board, didn't stand. She gestured to the chair across from her without looking up. "Ms. Etwater." "Ms. Craig." Eleanor glanced at a printed resume on the table. It was thin. Too thin for a position at Denise's level. "You have no degree," Eleanor said, skipping pleasantries. "No corporate training, no certifications in linguistic mediation, and yet you've been promoted to a high-visibility coordination role. How should I interpret that?" "As overdue," Denise replied. Eleanor's pen tapped once, sharply. "You're aware of how this looks?" "To whom?" "To the board, to our partners, to every employee who's spent years earning their place." Denise's voice didn't change. "I spent years earning it, just not in ways you logged." Eleanor finally looked up. Her eyes were sharp, not angry, curious. "You cleaned our floors." "I did. While solving language puzzles in my head, while studying cultural codes on your posters, while listening to your strategies and tracking your mistakes. Floors were my classroom. I just didn't have a whiteboard." Silence. Eleanor set down her pen. "Let me be clear. I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to assess risk." Denise folded her hands. "I understand. So here's what concerns me," Eleanor continued. "If this fails, it won't just be your reputation on the line, it'll be the precedent. The idea that merit alone, unverified, uncredentialed merit, is enough. That's dangerous in a company this size. And yet," Denise said quietly, "you're only here because someone once took a risk on you." Eleanor's lip tightened. She said nothing. Denise continued, "What scares you more? That I might fail, or that I might be better than you expected?" There it was. No malice, just the question. Eleanor sat back. She didn't answer. By the end of the meeting, no threats were made, no approvals were given. Denise walked out with nothing, except the certainty that she had just passed a second test. A harder one. Back downstairs, things were changing. The whispers had grown louder. "She's a PR stunt. She probably has some story Kellerman's using for image. Her daughter goes to a charter school. That's how she's getting coaching. It's not just her. Some employees avoided her entirely, afraid to say the wrong thing. Others watched her every move, waiting for a mistake. She made none. She kept showing up, translating complex reports, coaching project managers on cultural nuance, quietly solving problems no one had noticed before, like a vendor contract clause mistranslated in Swahili that could have cost the company 6 figures. Still, respect didn't come fast. It came in fragments. A designer from marketing stopped her by the elevator. "My cousin is learning Arabic. Can I introduce you?" An intern asked for her book list. A cafeteria staffer whispered, My son speaks German. I never thought that would matter here. And one evening, late, as Denise was leaving the office, she saw two members of the cleaning crew quietly wiping down the lobby chairs. She paused. They looked up, startled. Then one of them, Marisol, who had been working there longer than Denise, asked, "Is it true?" Denise smiled. "Yes. And you still say hi to us?" Denise held her gaze. "I never stopped being one of you." Marisol nodded slowly. "Some of us are proud, others scared. You're not supposed to change floors." "I didn't change," Denise said. "The door did." Marisol wiped her hands. "You going to keep it open?" "That's the plan." Kellerman was watching everything, the board, the rumors, the nerves. He stood by his office window one night, looking down on the city when Cho joined him. "You've started something," she said. "They're either going to follow or sharpen their knives." He nodded. "You think I made a mistake?" "No, but I think you underestimated how uncomfortable truth makes people." Kellerman exhaled. "I thought they'd celebrate her." Cho shook her head. "Not until they understand she's not a glitch. She's proof the system's blind." There was silence. "Then we fix the system," he said. "Start with this," she replied, handing him a proposal. At the top it read, "Voice Inside, Internal Talent Recognition and Development Framework." He looked up at her. "You named it after her." Cho shrugged. "She gave us the idea. Might as well give her the credit." Kellerman smiled. "And the room?" Cho nodded. "We're renaming the training hall, quietly. No speech, no ceremony, just a plaque. The Etwater Room." Simple. Exactly what she'd want. It was a Tuesday again, exactly 2 months after that first conversation in the lobby, where Jonathan Kellerman paused mid-call and heard 9 languages echo off a marble floor. Now Denise stood in front of a group of 20 people in the newly renamed Etwater Room. No one clapped. That wasn't her style. She had asked for no introductions, no slides, no applause. She just began. "My name is Denise Etwater," she said, calm and steady. "I was a janitor here. I cleaned these floors for 6 years. I also speak 9 languages. Today I work on international strategy. And I'm here because someone looked closer. No stagecraft, no dramatics, just presence, real." Across from her sat interns, apprentices, junior staff. Every one of them was there because someone had recommended them as underrated. A new internal policy let anyone, from security guards to assistants, anonymously nominate hidden talent. It wasn't about degrees, it was about results, curiosity, potential. She scanned the room. A young man near the window was holding back tears. Another scribbled frantically, trying to capture every word. "You don't need permission to be valuable," she continued, "but in this system, sometimes you need an advocate. That's why this room exists now. Not for me. For you." Someone raised a hand. "Do you think they respect you now?" Denise paused. "They respect the results. Not everyone respects the path. That's okay. I didn't do this to be liked." Another voice. "What would you say to someone who feels invisible?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, "You're not invisible. You're just surrounded by people who haven't learned how to see." The Voice Inside program grew slowly. First 10 applicants, then 50. Within a year, Halberg had hired 3 new coordinators from non-traditional backgrounds. A former delivery driver who wrote code, a single father from accounting who spoke 5 languages, a refugee from Syria who'd taught science back home and now ran cultural onboarding for new hires. The plaque in the training room remained small. Brass, no fanfare. It read, "The Etwater Room." For those who were ready long before they were seen. Denise never asked for more. She didn't seek promotion, didn't speak on panels, declined interviews, but her door was always open. She mentored quietly, read resumes, helped young analysts prepare for reviews. When someone got discouraged, she'd meet them for coffee and say one of 2 things, depending on the day. "You're not failing, you're just early." Or, "Respect isn't a gift, it's a habit. Start with yourself." One morning, as she arrived at work, a young man was waiting near the door. He looked nervous, held something in his hands. "My name's Malik," he said. "I'm in data entry." She nodded. "My mum's a housekeeper. 5 languages. I used to hide it." I thought it made me small. He handed her a folded note. On it, a drawing, a hallway with a woman in a burgundy uniform holding a mop like a scepter. She's the reason I applied here, but you're the reason I stayed. Denise held the note for a long moment. Then she said gently, "Scepter's the wrong word. It was always a key." She still took the long way to her office, past the lobby, past the elevators where it all began. Every time she walked those floors, someone would glance up, and this time they looked closer. One day she overheard a new intern whisper to a colleague, "That's her." And the colleague asked, "Who?" And the intern said quietly, reverently, "She's the one who proved we're not invisible."